he told us he heard voices.
I was a high achiever and tried to attain goals that would help me.
My husband and son were playing camping out in the backyard. And the next morning, my husband came in and he said, you know, it was so odd. It was so quiet last night. And Jody called me. He said, what's that? Who's that talking? Who's that talking?
So schizophrenia, the term schizophrenia means divided or split mind. It, I think, refers to both the ambivalence that people with schizophrenia can have, where they have difficulty in some ways deciding what they want, because what they want conflicts with what they feel is safe oftentimes, but also the earlier attempts at diagnosis, they viewed people as, you know, sort of appearing one way until they, you know, developed the symptoms, you know, in a more obvious way, and then they appeared to be quite different.
I felt ashamed of the diagnosis of schizophrenia because I knew it was something I was not able to deal with.
I could not accept it. I simply denied it.
I didn't think that I really had schizophrenia, but I was not telling myself the truth.
Onset symptoms in people who are acutely developing symptoms and soon going to need treatment, that primarily is hallucinations or delusions or behavioral disturbances that are difficult for people around them to manage, and it gets their attention and they seek care.
One time I went to Italy, and on the return at the airport, my husband and my daughter were there to greet me, and I couldn't figure out where my son was. And they both kind of turned and they looked over maybe 15 or 20 feet away. My son was standing there. He'd lost about 20 pounds, and he was holding an aluminum measuring cup that I've used for baking and what have you. We made an appointment to see the doctor the next day.
When I was younger, I had paranoid thoughts and suicidal tendencies, and I also would often refuse to take the meds because I did not believe they were working for me.
We were walking along a stream, and he came running towards me, fearful of the person who was talking to him, some stranger, like a devil.
I had auditory hallucinations or voices, and I was hearing things that were not real, that were not coming from anybody else, and they were just manufactured in my brain. I was hearing things that were like a little radio signal that was broadcasting in my head somewhere, and it was not someone that I knew of or knew who it was talking to me. It was just like a broadcast coming over my mind.
The mainstay of treatment for schizophrenia nowadays is medication treatment or pharmacologic treatment. There are various forms of that, including injectable forms or tablet forms.
My medicine also helps me attain soundness of mind because it helps me chemically balance the nature of my physical brain anatomy, and that I am much stronger and more willing to cope with myself and deal with stress. In my late teens, I was not doing well at high school, and I thought that I needed to get a vacation out of the city on my own, and it was an unreal solution for my problems, and it became a matter of jeopardy after I realized that I was so far out of reach.
We couldn't get to him, and we were lying there in bed, back to back, and I was so distraught, and I thought, I didn't think that my husband was thinking of anything, and I suddenly felt he was sobbing. He was sobbing, and I hadn't realized it. So those were the kinds of things that made us feel closer.
When I got back in town and was arrested by the police, it got just confounded, and I was in the jail for weeks. And then when I went to Harborview, I was not able to hold my ground very well because it was so inconvenient.
The nature of the illness is such that people often refuse treatment or reject efforts to help them because they don't view it as particularly helpful, or they may even view it as intrusive or invasive.
The impact that my son's schizophrenia had on the lives of the rest of us in our family was enormous.
Therapy, psychotherapy, which is essentially talk-based treatment, is also important, and that can include individual therapy to help people cope with symptoms or to help perhaps try to resolve some symptoms. Group-based therapy, so they can have some interaction with other people who have similar experiences. And then finally, family therapy, where you can get family members to engage in behaviors that make symptoms a little less likely to at least get worse.
My disorder has affected my family in that they have been sensitive to cope with me and worried that I might not do better.
I began to devote all of my time, effort, energy on trying to sort of cope with, understand, and fix the problem. I think my husband just simply withdrew completely, emotionally, psychologically, and I think that it wounded him enormously. I think my daughter became angry because she felt abandoned and misplaced by her role, because as the eldest child, she'd been used to most of the attention, and now she was getting none.
Although my sister would console me and try to help me with my schizophrenia, it didn't change our relationship very much.
I think that as he began to get well and recover, I became more comfortable, and as he became more and more recovered to the point where he is now, I think the relationship is almost the same as when he was a child.
I currently have a job as a apprentice cabinet maker. I work for a woodmaster who has been working with wood for 70 years, who is quite famous and has a chair that is in the Smithsonian. And I went back to school in 2005 and graduated with a bachelor's certificate degree in 2007 with honors, and a month later got a job with my present employer, and I've been working there steadily 3 days a week.
I think he's always loved to do artwork, which he does every week.
The doctors and the medicine now are so improved in that it's safer and more worthwhile to take care of the problems and live a better life and enjoy your life than to risk getting into serious mental trouble and losing your capacity to straighten things out.
It is not a curable disease, but together, the therapeutic interventions that are sort of behaviorally and talk-based, and the medications can, make a large proportion of people with schizophrenia quite functional.
I think the most important thing is that people with mental illness should not feel that they are deficient and that they are importantly able to regain their life